Be willing to downgrade your life for a year to live the lifestyle you want forever. This week on the Extreme Personal Finance Show. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 47 of the Extreme Personal Finance Show. This is a solo episode in which, I want to just talk through something that has kind of came up over the last few weeks and just kind of explain kind of where I'm at in my personal finance journey, but also kind of my real estate investing journey. And something that I came across, and again, I don't know if it's absolutely true, but I had seen somewhere on the intertubes that Jim Carrey once said, if you're not willing to downgrade your lifestyle for a year to have the lifestyle you want forever, then you care too much what other people think. And this really has come across my life recently. So I recently had left work just over a year ago to pursue a bunch of other endeavors. I have some real estate stuff. I got some side hustle stuff. I have a nonprofit that I'm trying to increase and make a bigger impact. But so I've been working with a partner. So I'm 50-50 partnership on a brand new commercial new construction real estate project that is going to be happening here relatively soon. We're going to hopefully be breaking ground here spring of 2025. But we've been talking about it for probably a year and a half. And again, I'm really fortunate to be working with a seasoned investor, and that he asked me to, if I wanted to be part of this project. This was one where I had originally tried to, I was going to possibly take on the entire project myself. And I ran through a bunch of numbers. I talked to lenders, and it really was a big bite, right? So it was just too big of a project for me to handle it where I'm at right now. So I went back to my friend and my partner and said, hey, I think this is an amazing opportunity. Could we partner together on this 50-50? And my partner agreed. And he said, yeah, he thinks it's a great project. He wants to move forward regardless. Anyway, so we've been having many discussions, kind of preliminary discussions. There's been many delays, city council meetings, city planning commission meetings, gaining preliminary approval, making sure that we have a lease in place. This is something that we actually are going in kind of a little bit of kind of backwards, right? So we actually have a tenant in place first before we actually started down truly the construction process. We need to make sure that we had that kind of locked in. Whereas a lot of, some of the other commercial projects, you would kind of, if you build it, they will come. You build, a commercial structure, office space, warehouse space, and then you have to find a tenant to fit the space. This was one where it's a build to suit. So we're building the facility for the particular tenant. And so the cool thing is, after a long time, we got a lease in place, a 15-year lease in place, which is awesome. This is great. So we're ready to move forward. And once we had the signed lease, then based on language in the lease, now clocks start ticking, right? Now we actually have certain deliverables that have to be provided, certain different milestones and time frame along the way, getting building permits in place. And again, this is a brand new construction, build to suit for the tenant. And therefore, we have everything from, excavation to soil work to watershed district stuff. It's everything from, tons of soft costs. And again, I'm learning every step of the way. I've never done a new construction, let alone a commercial new construction. It's really great that the team that I've kind of brought together with regard to lending and my partner and construction, building, the project manager, construction management, the architect, as well as the tenant. The tenant has their own architect and design team working with all of this, bringing these people together, the team together. I'm really fortunate that I can be involved as much as I want. I'm really looking forward to learning along the way. I mean, I'm talking hard hat in the field, learning all the stuff, right? But there had been some growing pains as we've been going through some preliminary approvals, and then now that we actually are starting to do bidding for the work, and then we have other building permits we needed to satisfy. For instance, the size of the project. This is roughly about a 12,000 square foot new construction project. Things like, making sure that we are up to code with regard to fire and safety, and like making sure we have sprinkler systems in place and that type of thing. And we are a little bit out from the city. We're not actually on city water and sewer. And so we have our own septic and well. And so why this is not a deal breaker, but why this is a concern is because providing, for instance, a sprinkler system involves a lot more consideration, and how big the unit is, or how big the facility is, 12,000 square feet, how many people are going to be occupying the space, how much water usage there will be. We need to make sure that the septic system and the well accommodates all of above, right? So making sure it accommodates the tenant, all of its uses, plus the sprinkler system in case there's a fire. And that included things like increasing the size of the well. So normally a well that would be dug is a 4-inch well into the ground. Now it's going to be an 8-inch well, for example, right? And that it does double the cost. Again, I'm learning this along the way. And then you need holding tanks for the water. Providing water directly from the well, it just isn't enough, right? It isn't enough. You wouldn't have enough throughput for a sprinkler system. So you have these holding tanks, plus you have a pump system to provide the pump of the water. Believe it or not, a sprinkler system for this size, it's about $71,000. And then also, there's excavation and earthwork that we talked about as well. And again, I'm learning along the way. And, we had to add extra land. So why I'm having this discussion and why I wanted to share this with the audience is understanding that sometimes things happen, and we need to be able to be flexible and kind of roll with it and, be accommodating. And there may be times when we have to downgrade our life for a little bit so that we can live the lifestyle that we want forever. And that's what I'm looking at for this particular project. So what had happened was I had, talked with lenders and my partner and understanding the size of the deal and how much cash I would need to be into this project. When we first started looking at the project, this was probably a $1.8 million build. Now we're looking at, up to $2.5 million build. It's growing in size and scope. And I started to get really nervous, right? I started to get really nervous about, is this something that I still can bite off? Is it more than I can chew? Right. And so I was really nervous for definitely about 4 or 5 days, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Right. And talking with the lender, there was a certain amount of, liquid cash I needed to go in to get, obviously, to fund the deal, to get the construction loan. And then during the process of construction, making sure I had enough funds to provide the interest-only payments while they're doing the build until we convert it to a conventional loan once the tenant takes possession of the facility. And it was really scary for me because those of you may know, I left my day job and I was using the rental income from my residential portfolio as my living expenses. However, I needed a pretty large portion of cash as kind of an outlay of cash down payment wise to fund the deal. Therefore, I needed to sell some existing property that I had. So some existing, properties I had within my portfolio. And so in selling those properties, now I had decreased the amount of monthly income or cash flow that I'm receiving from those. And I have that cash. Again, there was some debate whether or not I would do 1031 tax exchange for a portion of this or not. I actually attempted to do this when we originally were planning, And because of the delays with the county in assigning a property ID, I actually missed the 180-day requirement to close on the deal. And therefore, I had to end up paying tax and taking the proceeds from a previous sale that happened last year as well. Anyway, I know that's a lot of detail, but why I'm kind of showing it is because it really got down to I will have very thin cash flow to live on for the next 8 to 12 months. And that's okay. I've come to the realization that this is still the better opportunity to partner on this commercial investment. I have made the decision that this is the direction I want to go. So I understand, times are going to be tight, for the next year, but it's doing so will set me up for success in the long run. And there's a lot of things that what I mean by that, right? So once the property is operational, the tenant has possession, they are now paying rent, my cash flow will be twice as much as what I would be getting right now, right? And then there's other long-term advantages as well, right? So once the loan is seasoned, then we can do it, and the tenant's in place, they're making their rent payments. Commercial properties, the valuation is calculated a few different ways. One is basically leveraging just the pro forma, how much cash flow does that particular property make to determine the valuation. So the cool thing there is that, let's say 4 or 5 years down the road, we can now analyze and review, well, how much cash flow is that property alone generating, and we can actually reassess an appraisal, find out what that is worth, and we may actually be able to do typically what happens in these type of deals, from what I've learned, again, this is my first one, so I'm learning along the way, is that you would be able to do a cash out refi, again, ready to do the next project or pay down some other commercial debt that I may have. There's other possibilities for future growth because of this project. And that's why I really wanted to stay focused on the project, even though it's going to be tight these next 12 months or so. And why I really want to focus on the commercial real estate is because it does offer higher income potential. Because it's a triple net lease, we're going to talk a little bit about that and why that's really important. And then as well as the appreciation potential compared to typical residential leases. Because commercial investment properties require such a larger initial investment, but it provides a much more stable and predictable income stream later on, I feel as though it really is kind of the best way that I want to move forward. And I've said this before, I think investing in real estate is a proven strategy that can be used to build wealth, generate more of a passive income, and it can accelerate your path into financial freedom, financial independence, or whatever your next milestone is. And just really quick, let's just highlight some of the differences between residential real estate and commercial real estate investing. And so single family homes, that's what I have invested in up until this point. So duplexes, townhomes, condos, single family homes. And again, there's different ways, right? You can have long-term or short-term living, arrangements and leases in place. And they're pretty much straightforward and less capital intensive. You don't really necessarily need that much to get going, get started, especially like with your first time. It's a great choice for first time real estate investors. Commercial rental properties, on the other hand, are typically used for like business purposes, right? Office buildings, retail spaces, warehouses, industrial facilities, medical and healthcare facilities, as well as larger multifamily apartment complexes, that type of thing. Requires additional investment up front, and sometimes the management can be a little more complex, but however, I do see the potential for higher returns and longer term leases. For instance, like I mentioned, this particular project I'm involved in, we have a signed 15-year lease, right? And there's escalations in there every year, right? So it's, it's a bonus, right? I feel more confident going into this type of right now. I work with my management company in my residential, and I get emails. I just recently got emails from, I have 2 properties that the lease is up for renewal, and you have to look at, are we going to how much are we going to increase? I typically have been increasing the leases of my residential 2% a year. But in all honesty, that's not keeping up with comparable rents. It just is not. These last two, I had to tell my management company, I know we're going to possibly disrupt my tenants, and I hate to do that. Insurances have all gone up. I think I've mentioned before, insurance, like homeowners insurance and landlord insurance. I mean, my insurance has gone up 65% in the last 3 years on some of my policies. You can't sustain that, right? There's hardly any cash flow left. So I had to basically say I have to increase my rents 10%. I hated to do it. I really did. But if they were to look at a comparable unit for my residential properties in that territory, absolutely they're still going to be paying less than what they would if they moved to a different property. So anyway, talking about some of the advantages. One of the biggest things about the advantages and why I like commercial real estate investing and why I'm excited to kind of migrate into this is the most attractive feature is what's called a triple net lease. Now, triple net lease, the tenant agrees to pay the property's operating expenses. That includes the taxes, the insurance, and like ongoing maintenance cost. And that's like what's called additional rent, addition to what's called the base rent. So this arrangement shifts a lot of the financial burden and the risk from the landlord to the tenant, right? So imagine, again, my residential properties, I have an HVAC unit that goes out, one HVAC unit that goes out, that could negate all of the cash flow I have made for almost an entire year, depending on what the repair is, right? Sometimes, you may have to replace a unit. I mean, I had one just recently that upon service and a tune-up, the CO output of an old 22-year-old furnace was actually off the charts. The CO detector was maxing out. They had to actually red tag the unit. They couldn't service it. And that's dangerous, right? So obviously I don't want my tenants to die. Let's replace the furnace, right? One of those things that you have to do. Anyway, so a lot of the operating expenses, the maintenance costs, the taxes and insurance, that is all rolled into additional rent in addition to the base rent. So it really is highly advantageous for property owners, right? So it's way different than those residential investments. So you have lower landlord expenses, and since the tenant's responsible for most, if not all, of those operating expenses, me as a landlord, the costs are significantly reduced, lead to higher profit margins, less financial risk for me as the property owner. You also get more predictable cash flow. There are times when my residential real estate investments where a tenant just doesn't pay or they do a partial payment. That rarely happens with a commercial triple net lease, right? You have these long-term arrangements, typically 10, 15, 20 years, and they provide stable, predictable cash flow for landlords like myself. It's consistency. It makes it way easier to plan for the future and, future investments, future enhancements. You can definitely use that to maintain some of the extra, because I'm still responsible for a lot of the external, maintenance, all of the snow removal, lawn care, parking lot, landscaping, right? All of that stuff is still my responsibility, and we'll have the funds to do so. And so I absolutely love this idea going forward with this commercial real estate investment. And so I just wanted to let you know that I was relatively nervous. I will be able to move forward with the deal, but you know what? I'm not going to be flush with cash. I'm not, I don't have deep pockets, but you know what? It's for me, it's worth it. And so that was kind of the key takeaway for this episode, is really just understand that sometimes you may have to downgrade your lifestyle. You may have to cut those unnecessary expenses. I might have to cut a couple music festivals or some concert events and maybe eating out for the next year or so. But again, that'll open up to a greater opportunity for those things that I really love and enjoy later on. And so, and that can be at any time in your own timeline, right? Let's say you're paying off debt, you're paying off your credit card, you're paying off your student loans, right? You're paying off your mortgage, you're paying off your car. Understand that sometimes you'll have to just cut out those discretionary expenses for a short time to get ahead. And then you can absolutely take advantage of that lifestyle later on. So thanks again for letting me rant on this solo episode of the Extreme Personal Finance Show. I really do appreciate it. I'm really excited, though. I'm going to be sharing this process along the way, which is going to be pretty rad. I'm probably going to kick up again. I have social media accounts for my investment organization called Luger Investment Group. And we're going to be following this along the way over the next 12, 18 months as we go through the entire process. And I'm learning every step of the way. It's fun. It's fun to learn new things. It can be stressful at times, but it's fun to learn new things. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Please like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Really would appreciate it. Go ahead and leave a comment. Leave a comment on YouTube. Let's start a conversation. Are you into real estate investing? What are your thoughts on commercial real estate investing? I want to hear about it, man. Let's go ahead and have a conversation. I really would appreciate it. And we'll see you next time on the Extreme Personal Finance Show. See ya.